All right, we now welcome in for the first time on NFL Live our NFL officiating analyst, Russell Yerk. We're so excited to have you on the show, Russell. Let's start with a lot of conversation about the calls at the end of this game. I know, but he's going to give us some facts here. What did you see there at the end of this game?
Well, the first offensive pass interference that was called, very good call. Just like I heard you guys talk about, he seeks out the defender. The wideout comes in, isn't running a route. He lowers his shoulder. He initiates a block more than 1 yard downfield. They started at the 1. The block happened about 1 yard in the end zone, so it's 2 yards down. Very good call for offensive pass interference.
Okay, when it comes to the last play, it took a while for them to make this call. Just take us inside those conversations.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. First of all, I think it's a pretty clear offensive pass interference because he goes down and initiates contact, shoves him away, and then goes into his route. Definitely gains an advantage there. So good call for offensive pass interference. But I was a little surprised that they didn't call forward progress on that last play. Because here you see the block, he goes off into his route, clear offensive pass interference, but then he's controlled and driven back about 5 yards. Now, I can understand why they want to let Amon-Ra Brown break loose and make a play, potentially score a touchdown. So they might get a little delayed on forming forward progress there. But to me, it was definitely forward progress. I would have liked to see it shut down. Once they don't rule it forward progress, though, then you have the backward pass that Goff catches in the air, and he runs in for a touchdown. Now, afterwards, they were talking for quite a while. What are they talking about? Well, first of all, they're talking about, do they have forward progress, or are they allowing the play to continue and allow that backward pass? Second, when they have the backward pass thrown, they're talking about, was the receiver down by contact before he threw it? And then was it a backward pass or a fumble? Now, whether he's down by contact, whether it's a backward pass or a fumble, whether there's time remaining when Goff scores, those are all reviewable aspects that the replay official is looking at up in the booth while they're going through all the scenarios down on the field. So there is a lot to talk about there.
Russ, quick question, because this was kind of like a tipping point. I'm going not to this lateral back to Jared Goff, the first one that was called back for pass interference. How do you determine the push by the defensive back? How that decided if that initially created the run for the route for Tesla to bump into the secondary DB?
Right. No, that's a really good question, because the initial defender does get a hand on him, no doubt about that, but he doesn't push him or force him into the block that he ends up making. So that's what they're looking for. Does he push him? Is that the impetus that initiates that block? It wasn't. He has his hand on him. They're feeling each other out. That's an intentional block, and so I like the call.
Okay. All right.
For joining us here, of course, you can catch more from Russell.
Well, I just listen, man. Listen, I don't want to fight with Russ. Russ is my guy.
Yeah.
We've flown together before on Aikman Enterprises. But what I will say is
anybody he flies with is his new best friend.
But what I will say is I was very interested to see how you determine that contact, like how much force was created in order for him to bump into the DB. That was something that I had on my mind.
Okay, interesting stuff either way. Thanks to Russell Yerk for joining us here.
Russ.
We'll see you on the broadcast tonight with Joe and Troy. What went wrong for the Lions throughout this game?
It's kind of symbolic of their season as a whole. Remember, last year, all the fourth down conversions, they get them. We celebrate this team for their fourth down prowess. Well, they had a 4th and 3 early. They're going to go for it. It's what they do. Turnover on downs. That was the case against Kansas City when they were 0 for 5 on 4th down. It's been all season. They're the 21st ranked team on 4th down conversions. And then we talk about their line all the time and how great they are up front in their defensive line, the offensive line. I watched Aaron Rodgers lead a team on a 17-play drive that took up 6-7 yards in the entire third quarter. So this was what the Lions were all season. They lose at home. Another time they lose at home this season. And Rodgers in that run game had their way with them. This is the team we're supposed to look at. Gibbs and Montgomery, 15 yards rushing in a game that was a must-win for the Detroit Lions, their least since 1970. So, yes, we can spill all this ink and be so upset about the calls at the end. The truth of the matter was Pittsburgh Steelers absolutely dominated both lines of scrimmage the entire game.
Yeah, I think offensively, it's kind of sadly appropriate that a lot of the struggles were similar to what we saw back in Week 1 against Green Bay, and we shared the concerns about the offensive line then, and those concerns continued to pop up throughout the season, very much so, as Peter alluded to, in this game. Both in the drop-back game, where, especially in the first half, felt like Jared Goff would turn his back to run under center play action, and how many times where Steelers pass rusher is coming free through the A-gap. Again, this is something we've seen all season long with Goff, which is a big part of why against the blitz this year, he has his lowest completion percentage and highest pressure percentage as a Detroit Lion. And then in the run game on the ground, this to me was kind of more shocking, frankly, given what we've seen from the Steelers' run defense all year. The Lions averaged the lowest yards before contact, per carry of any team in the NFL. And maybe you can say they went away from the run a bit too much, but they weren't running the ball well, and that was pretty surprising.
Yeah, I think the question is, what was the cornerstone for this rebuild become a weakness? That's that offensive line. And then what's version 2 of this rebuild? Because version 1 seems to have closed this window right now. I'm not saying this Super Bowl run isn't going to be a big window with a general manager and Brad Holmes and a head coach like Dan Campbell. You have a window, but they have to graduate from this version. They didn't get it done in this 3-year span. And so now, who do they pay and how much? I think that's the next step, because Jahmyr Gibbs isn't under contract. But if you look at kind of where they are now to what their contract hits are going to be next year, this is financially at least going to be a very different football team. And so that's without players like a Jack Campbell and a Jahmyr Gibbs who they're going to have to pay. So the drafting will have to continue to be a home run, but I just want to see what's going to be the first steps of version 2 of this rebuild in Detroit, this retooling in Detroit.
I'll be quick. The team that we were concerned about stopping the run early in the season was the team that stopped the run, and that was the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they did a phenomenal job against Detroit, a team that I believe, if you don't get the run game going, is a very average offense. Got good players, but play action has always been the strength of the Detroit Lions. And the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers were able to stunt that part of their game, I think paid dividends for them late in the game. And then, too, man, like you look at Detroit's defense. The one thing they had to be able to hang their hat on with everything that's going on with their secondary is getting people on the ground and getting people in third and long situations. But not only do you give up major runs as a defense, you give up explosives for touchdowns. And that's what the problem was created. To your point, Peter, the late game stuff, obviously we'll have a conversation about that. But when I see Jaylen Warren bumping his head on the goalpost, beyond 40-yard runs, that's your issue for Detroit.
It was like every time you looked up, Jaylen Warren's running it for some long gain once again. It seems like Pittsburgh's peaking at the right time. What have you seen specifically out of the defensive side?
First off, that's rare for Pittsburgh to be peaking at the right time and ascending
no doubt
into the end of the season. But the run game was good. But I thought early on in the first half, they confused Jahmyr Gibbs, kept him in the backfield, and were able to get sacks when he was involved in pass protection. And we saw Cam Hayward get a big sack in the second quarter. And then we also saw Kyle Duggar with the safety. Here you're going to see Cam and Alex Highsmith working in unison to the top of the field. Jahmyr Gibbs gets caught in the wash. Highsmith is going to push Jared Goff up into the pocket, and a natural pick was created for Cam Hayward to get into the middle of the pocket and sack Jared Goff. Now, watch Jahmyr Gibbs' eyes as he scans back to Patrick Queen and Jack Sawyer. He's going to step that way, and he gets back late to blitz side. This is just a simulated pressure. It's only a 4-man rush, but the twist again fools Jahmyr Gibbs, and he's not a part of the pass protection. Me and Mina were riding to Dallas, I believe it was,
just about
having a conversation
that, Brian
about
Flores and what he did to this defense. And
exactly, and you see it again here for another team. Jahmyr Gibbs is so good in the pass game. He's that outlet for Jared Goff, but he truly has been a liability in pass protection.
Man, the Steelers outrushed the Lions, by the way, 230-15, their most rush yards in a game since 2016. That's how long it's been. Another big story in this game was what happened with DK Metcalf. There was the altercation between the Steelers wideout and a Lions fan that appeared to turn physical. Adam Schefter joining us now. What do we know about the situation? And Adam, what the league will do to handle this?
Laura, the league right now is looking into this situation, and there is some sort of announcement expected before the end of the day. When you talk to people around the league with the way that the league has handled suspensions and sportsmanship issues and things like that this season, one-game suspensions have been fairly common, but this almost is unprecedented. We haven't seen too many players go towards the fans, make contact, take a swipe at them the way that DK Metcalf did on Sunday. Now, we do not know exactly what was said to precipitate that. The fan told the Detroit Free Press that he simply was calling DK Metcalf by his government-issued name, the full name. Of course, others have suggested that it was more nefarious, that there were racial epithets, and a law firm that the fan hired issued a statement a short time ago saying that is categorically not true. The NFL now will be left to figure out how to best handle this particular situation.